Hey everybody, welcome to my channel, Data Doer, where we cover all things data. Before we start off, please like and subscribe to better yourself today. And let's talk about Alteryx today. So today what we're going to talk about, we're going to solve the problem of importing multiple tabs on Excel with different names in multiple Excel files. So what does that mean? Let's say you have multiple sales data. You have 2020, 2021, and they have multiple sheets, right? They have quarter one, two, three, four in each of them, right? And something you can do, and we can show you and check out my channel for how to do this, you can bring in all of your files with the same sheet name. So, right, you can do quarter one, so 2020 quarter one and 2021 quarter one pretty easily. And you can also do something where you bring in one file with all of the tab names, right? 2020, you bring in quarter one, two, three, and four. But it's a little bit more tricky to go and bring in all of the tab names. So how are we going to do that? All of the tabs from all of the files. So how are we going to do that? Let's jump right into Alteryx and solve it.
All right, let's jump in. All right, so what we have to do here is we need to input multiple files and multiple tabs, right? So if we think about this problem, right, typically Alteryx lets us bring in multiple files, and it also lets us bring in multiple tabs. Now what we need to do is we need to combine both of them, right? So we need to run a loop that brings in multiple files and then also multiple tabs. So let's do that. Let's jump right in. So first what we're going to do is we need to bring in multiple files, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring in the directory tool. And I need to say, give me all of the names of all the files in a folder, right? So you put them all in a folder. What I'm going to do is I am going to go to my folders. All right, here we go. So let's just run this. There you go. So I brought it in, and you can see here that I brought in two different files. So I have this quarter one through quarter three, 2021 and 2022. And each of these files has multiple tabs. So let's just go in and just see what this looks like, okay? So here's the folder, and if I open up both files, we're going to see that each one has multiple tabs. So you can see here's the 2022 file, has 1, 2, 3 tabs, and here's the 22 file, it has 1, 2, 3 tabs. So we need to bring all of these tabs in both of these files, right? So let's do that. So what happened right now is we brought in these two files. So now we need to bring in both of these files and bring in all the tabs that these files have, right? So how do we do that? So the best way to do this is to, if you recall what you can do in the input tab, so let's just open up a new workflow. In the input, so if I have this input, I can actually bring in all of the tabs from a file, right? So let's go into here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up that that same file that has the multiple tabs. And if I open it up, it says here one of the options is import only the list of sheet names. So if I do that, and if I run this, it's going to give me all of the sheet names, right? So if you think about it, what I need to do now is each one of these sheets, each one of these files, we need to bring in all 3 tabs, right? So in total, there would be 6 tabs, right? And if you can imagine on your file or whatever you might want to do, every file might have, one file might have 2, another one might have 3, another one might have 50, right? And you want to go to this file, open up all the tabs, this file, open up all the tabs, right? So let's do that. So what we're going to do is we're going to build a macro, and we're going to build what's called a batch macro, okay? So and you need to go into, I'll explain in a bit what that means, but let me just build it out. Go over to your developer tab and go to, actually, sorry. Let's go to the interface, the control parameter, right? So let's bring that in. We're going to connect it to here. So what we're going to say, so this tool automatically comes up, the action tool. It's going to say, hey, what do you want to replace? And what we want to replace is we want to replace the file, right? The file only. The file, the full string file path. Sorry, the full path. So we don't want to update this part. We're not going to feed that into it. We just want to bring in the file name itself. Okay, so what I did, let me repeat that. I just deleted this part where it says list of sheet names. Just deleted that. So what it tells this action tool is, hey, I just want you to replace this with whatever comes into the macro. So this control parameter, what it's going to do is you'll see it'll turn into this little tool. And what we're going to feed into here is the full file path of the file that we want to get the tabs for. So we're going to feed one file in, and then it's going to go in here and it's going to say, hey, replace this entire path with whatever you just fed in. And it's going to replace it, and then it's going to give you all the tabs. And then it's going to compile. It's going to compile all. It's going to repeat it every single time that you provide a new file name. So you provide one, and then it puts in together all the tab names, and then it gets the next one, and then it compiles all the tab names. And then I'm going to put the output, because once you compile all of them, it needs to output it, right? So you can use it. So that's what the output is. Now, here's where the key is. Oftentimes, this is a very tricky thing that a lot of people don't know, and it's pretty hidden. In Interface Designer, so if you don't have the Interface Designer, it should be in your view, and you can click on Interface Designer. Here in the properties, you have to do this auto configure by name until all the iterations run. That is the absolute key here. Why is that? If you do not click on this, if there are any columns that don't align, there's going to be an error, and this macro is going to error out. And it's going to tell you, hey, the schema for these two are different. You can't put them all together. So just make sure to click on this. And when you click on this, when all iterations run, what it does is it compiles all of them. And then once it has the compilation of all of the files that you put together, it puts them together regardless of the schema. And so, for example, if you have columns in one file called AB and another one called CD, it's going to put them all together. It's in one big file that says ABCD. Whereas if you had the first one, it would just give you AB, and then when CD came in, it would say, hey, there's an error, this doesn't agree with the schema, and it errors and it doesn't work. So that's where a lot of people get tripped up. Okay, so this is done. This macro is done. Congratulations if this is your first macro. Now let's just save this. I'm just going to save it somewhere. I'll just save it on here. Compile macro 1. Okay, so there you go. So now let's bring in this macro. So right clicked and then click insert. Then I go down here to macro, and it should come up because we have it right here. So it came up there. So now let's think about what we need to feed in here. We need to feed in, remember, the specific string. So let's do that. So let's go in here and let's see our options. Right? So we have this one, we have this one. It looks like this is the one that we need right here, right? This full path. So let's go ahead and connect it to that, the full path. That's the column. So let's go here and let's click on full path. All right. So click the browse tool and add it on because another little thing that you might not know is if you just ran it without with this browse tool, it won't compile all of them. So weird issue with Alteryx. Okay, let's see what happened. It was unable to read those files. Let's see why. This one looks fine. Oh, it can't read these files. Here, see that? These have that little squiggly mark and they're not actually files. They seem to be temporary files. So we're gonna have to remove those. So how can we remove those? Let's think about it. So right here, see this attribute hidden? It looks like they both have true. So that's because they're both hidden. So let's add a filter here. Attribute hidden false. That's what it should say. So let's go over to attribute hidden is false, and then let's rerun it. Boom. There we go. See that? Now we have all of the sheet names, right? So now what we need to do is we need to add in the full full path and the sheet names, and then what we need to do is we need to compile them all, right? So let's say you wanted to compile all of them. So let's do that. Okay, now what we need to do is we need to add the sheet name onto here. So we did not add the sheet name onto here. We just added the tab name. So let's do that. Let's go back to the macro. And this is actually a good way to look at the macros and see what happens when you update a macro, how the workflow updates as well. So what we want to do, remember when this happens, it just is going to compile the sheet names. But we also want the file name, right? So if we go in here, we want the full path. So let me run this and let me show you what it looks like. See that? We have the sheet name and we have the file name, right? And then what we need to just do is we need to combine these two, right? We need to see where it says list of sheet names. We need to just put that together with this. So we need to concatenate. So we need to replace the sheet name with this, the actual sheet name. And we'll do that. I suggest doing it here, but you can also do it here. But let's just keep going. So let me save this. Okay, there we go. It's saved. So now it tells me here the macro has changed and was refreshed. So it lets you know that we actually changed this macro. So okay, that's fine. So let's go here and run it. All right, so now we ran it. Now we have all of the information that we need in order to then run the next tool that typically people know, but we're going to go over this again, where you can actually run the file name and the sheet name and then compile all of them together and then get one big file, right? With the information from tab 1, 2, 3 from this file compiled with 1, 2, 3 from this file. So all 6 tabs will be compiled into one. And that's ultimately what we want, right? So let's do that. So let's bring in our formula tool. Okay, so what we want to do is we want to bring in all of these. All right, so let's replace this list of sheet names with this TB. All right, so let's do that. So in the file name, what we want to do is replace, and what we want to do is we want to replace this list of sheet names. That goes in the target, okay? And then the string is file name. The replacement is the sheet names column. So what are we doing? So this replacement formula, what we're doing is we have this file name, and in this file name, we want to replace list of sheet names with the sheet name, okay? So let's do that. Boom. Okay, so let's look at what it gave me. So you can see here, gave me the output. And now I have all of the sheets and all the files with all of their sheets. And that's what we need to then bring all of the information in, right? So now what we need to do is we need to compile them. So we have two different ways of doing this. So one of the ways we can do is use dynamic input. So let's do that. I'll show you this way, and then I'll show you a foolproof way as well, because dynamic input can be prone to error if there's any schema errors. Remember earlier in the video when I said if you have A, B, and then you want to bring in C, D, if those two, will not come together because the columns A, B, and C, D are different, so it'll bring up a schema error and say, hey, this file has A, B, and this one has C, D. Can't bring them together, they're different columns. Whereas, I'll show you this other method. We can use a macro, just like this, to bring them all in regardless of the schema. But let's do it the usual way. So let's come in here and let's go to my file. I believe it's this one. All right. So let's bring this in. We're going to bring TB. All right. I think that looks good. Okay. Read data sources. So here we're going to put in, we're going to read from file name. If we look here, we're going to read from file name. And we're going to change the entire file path. That's what we're going to do. Okay. So let's run this. You can see at the end you have 114 records, which is exactly what we needed. But let's say it doesn't work, right? You went this far and it's this one gives you a schema error, which is something that will probably happen a lot. So if you're doing this with your own files, this probably happens a lot. So let's do it the surefire way. So what we're going to do is we are going to compile, we're going to create another macro. So what we would do is input data, right? And let's bring in that same file we just did. Yeah, it's right here. Okay, so there we go. That's who we want to bring in. We run this, right? We get all of our good data, the 19 files. And similar as we did earlier, what we want to do is we want to use this control parameter because we want to run it over and over again for each one of these files. We want to run it. So this one, this one, this one, this one, this one, and compile all of them together. What we want to do in the action tool is we want to replace right here. That's what we want to replace. So let's look at the way this is formatted, though. It has this little number sign and has two apostrophes, right? So let's just keep that in mind. That's That's the same format we need to keep it in, okay? So we're going to go build the output, and then let me click File, Save As, and I'm going to save this macro so we can use it. So I'm going to say compile macro 2. All right. So now let's bring in our macro right here. Here we go. But let's remember, what we need to do is we need to put it in the same format as this guy, right? With the money sign and the apostrophes, right? So let's do that. Let's add another formula tool. But this one, let's bring it over here. We're going to do a similar thing as we did before. We will, let's see the way it comes in. So here, we need to, let's remove first this list of sheet names. So let's do replace, and then we'll do this file name. The target, again, is this. Right? And what we want to do is just replace it with nothing. So you can just put apostrophe. And then what we want to do is, once that is done, so remember this goes in order. So this is done first and then this. So now what we want to do is we'll have our file name. We'll have the file name. And we will add that apostrophe. And then we will add the sheet name, right? And then we will add the money sign, the apostrophe, and there we go. I think that should be it. So let's see what this looks like. Let's see if this looks right. Yeah, that looks right. That is the same format that we need for here. So let's look over here. Yep, TB money sign. Let's see. TB money sign. All right, so let's connect this up. So connect it up. We will go to file name. And then don't forget to add the browse tool. Otherwise, we'll compile all of them. All right, here we go. 114 files. Same as here, 114 files. Just that this one is foolproof and this one requires the schema. Hold on. Let me remember to, did not do this. This is not foolproof yet. The way it's foolproof is we go to Interface Designer, and then we go to here, Auto Configure, wait until all iterations are done, save this, okay? And now it's foolproof. Now we have all of them, 114 records. And that is it. That is how you bring in multiple files with multiple tabs into your Alteryx workflow. And remember, once you do this, at any point in time, you can actually add filters. So like, say for example, you only wanted tab 2s for multiple files, or you wanted tab 3s. You can actually add filters right here, right before you compile all of them, so you don't have to waste time. But yeah, just think about ways how to filter data if you don't want to bring it all in. But that is it. Please subscribe, like this video for more great content.